I still remember the first time I noticed something was wrong. The way ink seemed to creep across the pages of those ancient tomes, like they had a life of their own. Not when I was looking, mind you. No, that would be too obvious. It only happened when my focus wavered, when exhaustion fogged my eyes after 16 hours buried deep in the archives. Only then would the words rearrange themselves. Just a letter here, a phrase there. Nothing concrete enough to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I told myself it was fatigue. Every archivist in the vault told themselves the same lie. Because the alternative was unthinkable. Admitting the texts were alive, watching me as I watched them. And in our world, admitting that meant the Inquisition's attention and their purge. My name's Lawrence Hale, Chief Archivist of Vault Sigma 7. Keeper of over 3,000 volumes deemed too dangerous to destroy yet too vital to lose. 22 years I've spent in near darkness, surrounded by books that whisper when they think I'm not listening. Books that hunger, that wait. Started slow, creeping like a shadow, like a cancer growing cell by cell until the whole body gives out. My downfall began the moment I first touched the cover of the Codex of Impossible Geometries. I remember the cover was unervingly warm beneath my fingers, as if someone had just held it. But records said no one had opened that book in over a century. The Codex was one of the spoils from the purge of Esoteria 4, a small mining colony on the edge of the Cadian sector, where reality frayed at the edges like a worn sweater. Children born with too many fingers, buildings twisting impossibly overnight, defying all known physics. We found the Codex locked in the governor's vault, surrounded by the bodies of 13 saints, holy men whose eyes had been burned from their sockets, their fingertips worn to the bone. I should have burned it then and there, but orders were orders. Instead, I catalogued it as threat level secondary, shelved it behind stasis glass and wards in row 12, shelf 97. My job was straightforward. Record new acquisitions, maintain preservation protocols, monitor for physical degradation, prepare quarterly reports. Never read beyond the basics. Never spend more than 3 hours with any text. Never remove anything from the vault. Never speak of what I saw outside my clearance. Such simple rules. Boundaries meant to keep us safe. For years, I followed them like a machine, until the dreams began. At first, they were harmless enough. Symbols flashing through my mind, the smell of ancient paper, the sensation of pages turning beneath my fingers. Normal dreams for an archivist, or so I told myself. But then they changed. I began to understand languages I'd never learned. Knowledge poured into my unconscious like floodwaters, alien yet familiar, as if I were remembering something long forgotten rather than learning anew. I woke each morning with my mind buzzing, connections forming between unrelated fields of study, insights blooming like flowers in a cracked pavement. I started making notes, innocent questions about classifications, observations about hidden connections, nothing heretical, nothing dangerous. Or so I thought. The dreams grew more vivid. Night after night, I wandered impossible libraries, shelves stretching infinitely under impossible skylines. Books called to me by name, promising secrets and power that could lift humanity beyond its miserable existence. I began to see a pattern in the vault, a grand design hidden in the scattered fragments of forbidden law. And always I felt watched, not by colleagues, not by the servitors patrolling the aisles, but by something vast, patient, and hungry. I told myself I was loyal. I convinced myself that by understanding the enemy, I served the crown better than those who locked away knowledge without question. Easy lies ambition whispers when it takes root. I started needing less sleep, my mind too alive to shut down. Food lost its appeal. Why eat when there were feasts of knowledge waiting? My colleagues noticed the dark circles under my eyes but said nothing. In a place like ours, oddities were common. Then came the day I first saw the page change while watching. It was during my inspection of the Codex. I'd taken it out for quarterly assessment, checking for decay or contamination. The stasis field hummed softly as I deactivated it. Wards flickering as I spoke the counterspell drilled into me when I took this post. The Codex lay on the table before me. Its cover the dark red of dried blood, symbols etched into its surface shifting subtly in the light. The rules were clear. Visual inspection only, no reading beyond the cataloging info on page 1. I opened it carefully with sanctified tools, fingers gloved against the unholy touch. And there it was, on page 17, the words subtly rearranged before my eyes. Not a quick shuffle, but a deliberate, purposeful shift, like a spider shedding its skin. Where once was a description of non-Euclidean mathematics, now appeared a question in perfect Old English script. Do you want to know more, Lawrence Hale? My heart should have stopped. My soul should have recoiled. Instead, I felt a thrill bordering on ecstasy. This was proof the texts were alive. They had chosen to speak to me. I should have reported it, sealed the vault, submitted myself. That would have been the proper, loyal thing, the human thing. Instead, I whispered, yes. After that whispered, yes, everything began to unravel and evolve in ways I never could have imagined. The codex became my secret confidant, revealing tiny, tantalizing truths each time I inspected it. I found myself inventing excuses to access it more often, fabricating reasons so plausible even I believed them. Other books in the vault followed suit, their contents shifting quietly, responding to questions I hadn't dared to voice aloud. My dreams deepened into vivid journeys through labyrinthine libraries where corridors twisted like the pages of a Mobius strip. Shadows moved just beyond sight, and a figure lingered in the periphery, never fully revealed, but always watching. Its presence was both unsettling and oddly reassuring, like the eerie calm before a thunderstorm that promises change. The changes in me were subtle but undeniable. My once dull brown eyes began to shimmer with flecks of gold, catching light like a cat's in a dark alley. My skin developed a strange sensitivity, tingling whenever the temperature shifted, sometimes revealing faint, almost scale-like patterns beneath the surface. I began to remember every word from every text I had ever touched, my mind expanding beyond all human limits. I was no longer just Lawrence Hale, I was something else, something more. Even still, I clung to the illusion of loyalty. I'm doing this for the crown, I told myself. I'm becoming a better guardian of knowledge, preparing to wield it against our enemies. Such comforting lies we tell ourselves when ambition takes root and the line between duty and obsession blurs. Then came the day the vault received a new acquisition, a collection of scrolls recovered from a derelict starship drifting near the Cadian Gate. The ship's crew had succumbed to madness before the Inquisition intervened, but the scrolls themselves seemed inert, just star charts detailing regions beyond the Astronomican's light. My role was to oversee their initial assessment, delegating the hands-on work to lower-ranking adepts. One of them, a young woman named Eleanor, was unrolling a scroll when she suddenly froze. Her hands trembled, lips moving silently as if whispering secrets to the void. None of the others noticed at first, but I did. And then I saw it, her shadow peeling from her body like burnt skin, rising behind her, shifting into a grotesque silhouette with limbs no human possessed and a head elongated into something avian and terrible. The shadow bent down, whispering into Eleanor's ear. Her trembling ceased. She turned slowly to face me through the blessed glass, her eyes replaced by swirling vortices of electric blue energy, teeth multiplying into a jagged, unnatural grin. "He's been watching you, Lawrence Hale," she said, voice layered with countless others speaking in unison. "The architect of fate is pleased. You've walked the path as foreseen." Alarms screamed as the other adepts reacted, containment protocols activating. Blast shields began descending, sanctified promethium ready to incinerate everything inside. I should have allowed it, sealed the room, let the flames cleanse the corruption. That would have been the prudent, loyal choice. Instead, in a moment of reckless defiance, I overrode the lockdown, citing a false alarm. The blast shields halted, retracted. The alarms silenced. And in that eerie quiet, I heard Eleanor's laugh. A sound like shattered glass scraping parchment. "Well chosen," she whispered, then collapsed, limp and lifeless. The official report blamed exposure to unshielded warp artifacts, negligence in screening, and promised new safety protocols. No mention of the shadow, Eleanor's words, or my intervention. I told myself I saved invaluable knowledge. That one sacrifice was acceptable. But alone in my quarters that night, staring into a cracked mirror, I faced a harsher truth. I hadn't saved knowledge. I'd protected the entity speaking through Eleanor, the Watcher, the Guide, the Corruptor. My eyes, once mostly brown, now gleamed gold like twin lanterns, irises beginning to split and multiply. I was changing, transforming, and a dark part of me welcomed it. As I drifted to sleep, my dreams carried me deeper than ever before, into a shimmering labyrinth of crystal corridors that shifted with impossible geometry. At its center sat a throne of living metal, occupied by a figure whose form flowed like molten wax, sometimes avian, sometimes reptilian, sometimes a cruel mockery of human features. 9 enormous books floated around it, pages turning endlessly, words rewriting themselves. The figure's voice echoed through my bones. "Approach, archivist. You who have kept my gifts locked away, only to find yourself unable to resist their allure. How delicious your fall has been." I should have been terrified. Instead, I found myself in awe. "What are you?" I asked, though part of me already knew. The figure laughed. A sound like civilizations crumbling, paradigms shattering, reality itself rewriting. "I am Tzeentch, the changer of ways, architect of fate. You, Lawrence Hale, are my instrument in a game beyond your comprehension." "I serve the crown," I replied, voice hollow even to myself. "Do you?" The figure's face twisted into a mockery of amusement. "Tell me, loyal servant, why did you override the containment protocols? Why have you communed with forbidden texts? Why do you thirst for knowledge that should remain locked away?" I had no answer that wouldn't damn me further. "You serve change," Tzeentch continued. "Evolution, the breaking of chains. You serve me, whether you admit it or not." "What do you want from me?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. "Want? Nothing. You already give me everything I desire, your curiosity, your ambition, your sacrifice. These offerings surpass any ritual slaughter." One of the 9 floating tomes drifted toward me, opening to blank pages. "Your story is still being written, archivist. The question is not what I want from you, but what you want from me." I knew instantly. Understanding. I want to understand. Tzeentch's laughter softened, almost gentle. "Then understand you shall. But knowledge demands a price. Are you willing to pay?" "What price?" I asked, teetering on the edge of a precipice. "Everything you are, everything you might have been, your humanity, your soul, your place in the crown's design. All sacrificed on the altar of understanding." I should have rejected the offer, turned away, fought to wake myself. Instead, I reached for the book. "I accept." Pain tore through me, cells unmaking and reforging. In my dream, my skin split open. Not blood and muscle, but writhing symbols and equations, the very fabric of reality laid bare. I screamed, then laughed, and that laughter became a tide, washing over me, transforming me into something new. When I awoke, sweat soaked my sheets, smelling faintly of ozone. My hands trembled as I lit the bedside lamp, its soft glow revealing the horror and wonder of what had happened. Blue-black iridescent feathers had erupted from my forearms, piercing the skin like quills through parchment. They rustled with every movement, sensitive to air currents I'd never noticed before. And my eyes, now 4 in number, all golden with vertical pupils, reflected not just me, but 1,000 possible futures, each a shimmering thread of destiny waiting to be pulled. I was no longer just Lawrence Hale. I was the change. I stood before the cracked mirror in my cramped quarters, studying the impossible reflection staring back at me. For golden eyes, 2 original, 2 newly formed, blinked in perfect sync, each set flickering with a strange, otherworldly light. The iridescent feathers covering my forearms shimmered softly in the dim glow of the lamp, their edges catching the air like delicate, obsidian flames. I half expected the damn things to start preening themselves, but no such luck. At least I hadn't sprouted a tail. Yet, I pulled on the high-collared black robe I always wore in the vault, the fabric heavy and stiff with protective wards woven into the threads. Gloves hid the feathers on my hands, and I affixed a pair of augment filter lenses over my eyes, common enough among archivists who dealt with hazardous texts, but now a perfect disguise for my mutated gaze. If anyone asked, I'd just blame it on a nasty case of digital eye strain. Those late nights, I'd say, and the fluorescent lighting, you know how it is. The vault was as silent as a crypt when I arrived for my shift. The night crew was wrapping up their last tasks, their footsteps echoing faintly in the vast concrete corridors. The heavy metal doors groaned shut behind me, sealing away the outside world and plunging me into the familiar cold embrace of forbidden knowledge. I moved through the aisles with a new sense of purpose, my transformed senses picking up currents of energy flowing from certain volumes. Some pulsed steadily, like distant heartbeats. Others flickered erratically, sparks of raw power barely contained. And then there was the codex of impossible geometries, radiating a constant, unwavering glow that called to me like a siren's song. Tonight, I had a secret no one else possessed. A small, crystalline key resting in my inner robe pocket. The key to the codex's vault, a lock designed to shatter if forced, held only by the inquisitorial liaison who visited quarterly. Their next visit wasn't for another 27 days. Yet here was the key, warm to the touch and humming faintly, as if alive. I wondered, half joking to myself, if the key had been delivered by courier or simply materialized out of thin air. Maybe I'd develop a taste for magic deliveries next. Amazon Prime? Try Amazon Primeval, I muttered under my breath. With practiced ease, I passed the wards and null field generators protecting the special containment section. The sacred prayers, the hexagonal glyphs, the silver-lined lead box. All should have repelled me, should have warned me away. But I walked through them like a ghost, my being drifting between realities, no longer bound by the rules of our world. I inserted the crystal key into the lock. It turned smoothly, the mechanism clicking open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside lay the codex, its dried blood-red cover now glowing faintly with intent, symbols shifting subtly beneath the surface. I lifted it reverently, careful to avoid direct contact, carrying it to my private study alcove, a small, secluded room where I could work without interruption. The door slid shut behind me, sealing with a soft thud. I engaged the privacy lock, deactivated surveillance recorders citing Regulation 16, subsection 4, examination of potentially mimetic hazardous material requiring focused concentration. Once alone, I opened the codex. The pages no longer contained the star charts or non-Euclidean mathematics I'd cataloged years ago. Instead, a detailed account of my transformation sprawled before me. Every dream, every choice, every subtle change documented with anatomical illustrations that chilled and fascinated me in equal measure. Beyond that was knowledge, pure, undiluted understanding of the warp and its currents, the true nature of the entities humans called gods, the mathematics of reality manipulation, and a language that could rewrite physics itself when spoken correctly. I read for hours, words flowing directly into my mind, bypassing the normal barriers of learning. I wasn't reading anymore. I was experiencing, integrating, becoming. Time slipped away unnoticed until a sharp knock shattered the trance.
Archivist Hale?
You've been in seclusion for over 7 hours. Are you well? Adept Voss's voice. My most trusted assistant. A lean man with worry etched into every line of his face. He'd served under me for 12 years, meticulous and loyal, though that loyalty was about to be tested. Enter, I said, hastily closing the codex and pulling my hood lower. The door slid open, and Voss stepped in, eyes darting immediately to the codex on my desk. Recognition and fear flickered in his gaze. That's not the new acquisition, he said quietly. That's the Codex of Impossible Geometries. It should be in high-security containment. How did you access it without the inquisitorial key? I sighed. Voss had been a good assistant. In another life, another future, he might have succeeded me. Tell me, Voss, have you ever questioned our work? The knowledge we lock away, the truths we deny humanity. His jaw tightened. No, sir. The texts are forbidden for good reason. They corrupt. They destroy. They serve the ruinous powers. I corrected gently. They elevate. They free us from the constraints of a reality too small for human potential. Voss took a step back, hand moving toward the small alarm panel beside the door. Archivist Hale, I believe you've been compromised. I must insist you remain here while I contact security. I saw the futures branching before me. If Voss triggered the alarm, armed guards would arrive within minutes. The Inquisition would follow. I would be captured, interrogated, executed. The knowledge I'd gained would be lost. Unacceptable. I raised my hand, slowly removing my glove to reveal the iridescent feathers curling over my skin. Voss gasped, horror twisting his face. Emperor, protect me, he whispered, lunging for the alarm. I spoke a single word, no human tongue could form it. A syllable from the language of reality manipulation I'd learned from the Codex. The air between us shimmered like heat haze. Voss froze, rigid as a statue suspended mid-motion. I approached him slowly. His eyes, the only part still moving, tracked me with terror. I could kill you, I said, voice casual. It would be the practical choice. But death is so final, so devoid of potential. And potential, my friend, is the currency of change. I placed my feathered hand against his forehead. His skin pulsed with warmth, alive with possibility. Instead, I said, I offer you a gift, perspective. Another word, longer and more complex, tumbled from my lips, sounds folding back on themselves, defying comprehension. Voss's eyes widened, irises splitting and multiplying in seconds what had taken me months. His body convulsed, back arching, mouth opening in a silent scream as blue-black feathers tore through his flesh, ripping his robes, sprouting from his scalp into a crown of shimmering plumage. When it ended, I released him from the temporal suspension. He collapsed to his knees, panting, fingers clawing at the feathers before realization dawned in his quadruple gaze. What have you done to me? He asked, voice layered with haunting harmonics. I've elevated you, I said simply, made you suitable to serve as my acolyte in what's to come. Voss stared at his transformed hands, flexing talon-like nails. The Inquisition, he finally said, eyes darkening. They know something's wrong. They're coming. Yes, I replied, which means we must accelerate our plans. The time for subtle corruption has passed. Now we embrace a more direct approach. My new apprentice nodded, wings of shadow and light fluttering as he rose. Good, I said, reopening the codex. It's time to prepare. The ritual chamber was a chaotic symphony of shadows and light when Voss returned, leading 4 adepts through the vault's labyrinthine corridors. Each of them carried the weight of uncertainty in their eyes, but none dared question the gravity of the summons. I'd instructed Voss to gather those who showed the most intellectual curiosity, those whose minds weren't yet shackled by rigid doctrine. They spilled into my study alcove like a hesitant tide, faces pale beneath the flickering glow of warded lamps. Among them was Thea, a striking young woman with raven-black hair cascading over a form cloaked in the standard black robe, the high collar framing her pale neck like a widow's veil. Her dark eyes glittered with defiant intelligence, lips pressed into a wary line. She carried herself with the grace of someone who had long danced on the edges of propriety, barely concealing the subtle curve of her ankle beneath the robe, the glint of a delicate silver bracelet catching the light as she shifted uneasily. Behind her came Grayson, an older man whose salt and pepper hair matched the deep furrows etched across his weathered face. His robes hung a bit loose, revealing worn leather boots that had clearly walked many miles through dusty archives and forgotten corridors. There was a hunger in his gaze, not for violence, as he'd claim, but for knowledge, for meaning beyond the dry pages of Imperial edicts. The other 2 were younger, Celeste, with streaks of silver running through her dark hair, bearing an analytical gaze that reminded me of myself before the change. And finally, Nathaniel, who clutched his robes tightly, eyes darting nervously as if expecting the shadows to reach out and claim him. Voss, now barely recognizable as the man he once was, his feathers shimmering with iridescent blues and blacks, blocked any attempt at retreat. His voice, now a melodic trill, echoed softly as he declared, "You have been chosen for ascension." Thea spat the word heresy, the venom dripping like acid from her lips, This is blasphemy against the crown. Evolution, I corrected calmly, stepping forward. The next step for humanity. The crown itself sought to elevate mankind. Did it not? To free us from the chains of our limited existence. I offer what was promised but never delivered. True transcendence. Grayson stepped forward, voice firm and unwavering. We serve the crown and its laws. We are guardians against the corruption you embrace. I sighed, genuinely disappointed. I selected you because of your curiosity, your willingness to question. Perhaps I misjudged. Or perhaps your indoctrination runs too deep. Voss moved with unnatural speed, seizing Thea and Grayson by their heads. They struggled, but their protests dissolved into screams as transformation seized them. Feathers bloomed like midnight flowers across their skin, eyes splitting into golden prisms, minds expanding beyond their mortal limits. Celeste's analytical mind absorbed the changes with less pain, her transformation unfolding like a dark blossom opening to the moonlight. Nathaniel, however, began to pray loudly, invoking the crown's protection, reciting liturgies of purity and aversion. His voice trembled but held firm, a beacon of stubborn resistance. I watched the single, unyielding thread of his future, a line of defiance that would never bend or break. Your devotion is commendable, I told him, but futile. No divine ear hears your prayers here. You face this moment alone. He spat. I choose loyalty. I choose humanity. I reject your corruption. I nodded, respecting his choice even as I prepared to use him. With a gesture, I bound him at a key point in the ritual pattern, a fixed anchor of resistance, necessary friction for what was to come. The ritual space was transformed. Furniture pushed aside, the floor inscribed with complex interlocking pentagonal patterns drawn in ash and my own blood, artifacts of power positioned at critical intersections. The air hummed with latent energy, reality itself growing thin. The transformed adepts moved with predatory grace, their new forms a blend of human and something otherworldly, feathers ruffling softly, eyes gleaming with expanded awareness. Voss, now more feather than flesh, led them with a silent authority. Through my enhanced perception, I watched the threads of fate ripple outward as the Inquisition advanced. Inquisitor Clark was already breaching the outer defenses, his stormtroopers methodically clearing the path. He was the final piece, the sacrifice of potential that would complete the ritual. The transformed Celeste's voice broke the tense silence. They bring reinforcements. Stormtroopers and a sanctioned psyker. Good, I replied, tracing my fingers over the glowing symbols. Violence would waste the potential we require. We will welcome them, willing or not. As the ritual progressed, the Codex's words shifted and rearranged themselves, becoming cryptic, refusing to reveal the final step. A test, I realized, a test of intuition. I pondered the missing element, the counterweight to my own presence in the pattern. Not a thing but someone. Voss, I commanded. Retrieve the special containment case from Sector 12, Vault 93. His eyes gleamed in understanding. The Xenotech communication device, recovered from the Allery ruins on Hectorus Prime. A relic no tech priest had ever managed to activate. As he departed, I instructed the others in the gestures and incantations needed to shape reality, their transformed voices weaving impossible sounds that bent the fabric of existence. Nathaniel, still bound, prayed louder, his resistance a futile spark against the tide of change. You misunderstand, I told him. This is not chaos, but evolution. A grand experiment. He whispered, madness. I smiled. Lucidity, perhaps. You cling to false certainties while the world shifts beneath your feet. Voss returned, bearing the locked container. I deactivated the seals with my transformed touch, the device revealed. A crystalline gem swirling with colors that hurt the eye. I placed it at the center of the pattern, aligning its facets in a sequence that unlocked its latent power. The crystal pulsed, light growing until shadows danced wildly against the walls. Take your positions, I ordered. The adepts formed the pentagon, faces set, eyes glowing with newfound power. I stood opposite Nathaniel, completing the symmetry. With the codex open before me, I began the incantations. Sounds no human language could capture, concepts beyond mortal minds. Reality shimmered, bending, stretching. Then the door exploded inward. Inquisitor Clark stood framed in smoke and light, bolt pistol raised, eyes burning with righteous fury. By the Emperor's will, he declared, voice amplified by armor vox units. You stand excommunicate, traitor. Your heresies end here. I smiled, lowering my hands. The ritual paused on the edge of completion. Your timing is impeccable, Inquisitor. Please join us. Your participation is necessary. Confusion flickered across his face. You are corrupted, Clark. Tainted by the warp. You will be purged along with your followers. Corrupted, I mused. Or evolved. The sanctioned psyker stepped forward, eyes unfocused, extending psychic senses toward us. Her face slackened, then twisted in pain. Abomination, she whispered, blood trickling from her nose. They transcend human comprehension. I turned to Clark. Even your psyker sees the truth, though her mind is too small to grasp it. We are evolution incarnate. Heresy, Clark spat, raising his hand to order fire. But at that moment, I completed the ritual, reaching out with my transformed mind to the psyker's thoughts, channeling the ritual's energy through her to Clark and his stormtroopers. They screamed, weapons dropping, bodies collapsing under the weight of revelation. The psyker convulsed, blood pouring from her eyes and ears as her mind burned out. The crystal shattered, light exploding outward, shattering the veil between worlds. And then there he was, not physical but present, a vast intelligence focused through our gateway. Tzeentch, the changer of ways. He regarded us with something like approval. To my acolytes, a guide to transcendence. To the resistant Nathaniel, a nightmare. To Clark and his men, a shattering truth. And to me, a mirror reflecting not who I was, but what I might become. Well done, Archivist. His voice echoed inside my mind. You have opened the way. Now comes your true purpose. Nathaniel's scream split the air, a sound of pure existential terror as he glimpsed what I could not. The price hidden beneath the bargain. What would you have of me? I asked, reaching into the vast intelligence. Everything, came the reply. A concept encompassing possession, transformation, beginning and end. I understood then. I was never the master of this fate, only its vessel. Yet I embraced it, for this was evolution, and I was ready. The world around me fractured and reformed like shattered glass underfoot. The ritual chamber dissolved into a shifting mosaic of light and shadow, the very fabric of reality bending to the will of the presence that now flowed through me. My acolytes, once tethered to their human forms, transcended into abstract manifestations, feathers melting into patterns of pure energy, eyes multiplying into constellations of awareness. They were no longer individuals but extensions of the will I now shared with Tzeentch. Clark and his stormtroopers, broken by revelation, transformed differently. Their armor fused with flesh, weapons growing organically from their limbs. Their minds became twisted libraries of forbidden knowledge, cursed repositories that drove them into frenzied crusades across the Imperium. Each believed they served the Emperor while unknowingly executing Tzeentch's will, a tragic irony woven into their fate. Nathaniel, the last bastion of resistance, remained bound at the ritual's anchor point. His unwavering faith created the necessary friction that balanced our transformation. But when his purpose was fulfilled, he ceased, not slain but erased. His potential futures collapsed into a singular point of non-being, sealing the ritual's completion. I, Lawrence Hale, ceased to be merely human. I became a nexus, a point where Tzeentch's designs intersected with the material world, where currents of fate could be perceived and subtly guided. I was no god, no omnipotent force, but a consciousness beyond mortal limits, aware of possibilities countless and infinite. The vault itself awakened. The texts and artifacts pulsed with renewed energy, no longer prisons but seeds of change planted throughout the Imperium. The containment wards inverted, not to keep corruption out, but to keep prying eyes away, creating a sanctuary for Tzeentch's works. Through my altered perception, I saw ripples spreading through reality, disturbances in the warp that would draw others like us toward this new center of power. Futures shifted, possibilities bloomed and withered, all advancing the grand design beyond comprehension. I understood it had always been inevitable. From the moment the Codex entered my care, my path was set. Every choice, every seeming accident was woven into the tapestry of fate by hands unseen. My fall was no tragedy but a deliberate cultivation, a controlled evolution. I smiled, not with regret but with exultation. To be chosen as an instrument of a god, to be meticulously prepared for this moment, was the highest honor. Now I existed beyond time, beyond linear identity. I was Lawrence Hale and so much more. I was the archivist of forbidden knowledge and its purest expression. Through me, Tzeentch observed the material realm. Through me, his influence spread, in shifting texts, whispered dreams, and seductive promises of knowledge to those whose curiosity outweighed their caution. Sometimes, when I find a mind like mine, a spark of ambition and hunger, I reach out. I cause texts to shift when eyes look away, plant seeds of curiosity that bloom into glorious corruption. This is how Tzeentch corrupts, not with force, but with impossible questions, with glimpses of truths too vast for mortal minds. He offers evolution without revealing its price. I know that price now. If I could return to the moment before I first noticed the shifting words in the Codex, would I choose differently? Report what I saw, submit to purging, deny the transformation. The question is meaningless. There was never a choice. Free will is an illusion, a cruel deception. We are puppets dancing on strings we cannot see. The difference is I can see the strings. I can perceive the puppeteer, and in that awareness, I have found a freedom beyond anything I knew. This is my testimony, my warning. Though it changes nothing, though it saves no one, I offer it freely. The texts are watching. The knowledge is alive. It hungers for minds capable of containing it, vessels worthy of its corruption. Will you be the next to notice the shifting words? The next to dismiss it as fatigue or imagination? The next to begin the long, inevitable fall into glorious transformation? I will be waiting. I will be watching. For that is now my purpose. My function in Tzeentch's grand design. I am Lawrence Hale. And I am so much more. I am the thing that waits in forbidden knowledge. The promise hidden in forbidden texts. The future coiled within the present like a serpent ready to strike. And I am patient. So very, very patient. Because change comes to all things. Even to you. Especially to you. The days that followed were a blur of shifting shadows and whispered secrets. The vault, once a cold mausoleum of forgotten knowledge, pulsed with a newfound vitality, its very walls humming with the subtle cadence of transformation. I moved through the aisles like a conductor guiding an unseen orchestra, sensing the currents of power swirling beneath layers of parchment and leather bindings. Voss, now fully embraced by his transformation, was no longer merely my assistant, but a herald of the change sweeping through us. His feathers glistened under the dim vault lights, each movement a graceful dance of darkness and light. His eyes, quadruple orbs of molten gold, watched me with a mixture of reverence and anticipation. "Master," he said one evening, voice a melodic trill that echoed faintly in the silent chamber. "The others are adapting swiftly. Their minds expand with each passing cycle." I nodded, pulling my hood lower to shadow my quadruple gaze. Good. The path ahead demands no less. But even as we advanced, the ripple of our working spread beyond the vault's sanctum. I sensed tendrils of awareness reaching into the wider Imperium, threads of fate nudged by unseen hands. Agents loyal to the crown grew uneasy, whispers of anomalies in the archives, unexplained energy surges, and missing personnel. The Inquisition was stirring, their shadow stretching toward us like a tightening noose. One evening, as I pored over the Codex, the crystal key appeared again on my desk, no longer warm, but pulsing softly, as if breathing. I traced its facets with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The key was both a gift and a warning, a reminder that the game was far from over. A sudden knock startled me. Voss entered, his movements fluid, almost predatory. "Master, I have gathered those who showed promise and yielded to transformation. They await your guidance." I sighed, the weight of inevitability settling over me. "Bring them here." They arrived in a silent procession, adepts whose eyes gleamed with the golden light of change, their forms a haunting blend of human and something other. Among them was Salandra Corvus, her silver-streaked hair framing a face etched with both fear and determination. She moved with analytical grace, her mind clearly wrestling with the new realities unfolding within her. As I addressed them, my voice steady but heavy with portent, I saw the flicker of doubt in some eyes, and the spark of curiosity in others. "This is no heresy," I told them. "It is evolution, a transcendence beyond the limits imposed by the crown and its dogma. You stand at the threshold of possibility. Will you step forward, or cling to the fading shadows of your old selves?" Salandra stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I accept." Others followed, some with trembling hands, others with fierce resolve. A few resisted, their prayers rising like fragile shields against the tide of change. For them, I offered a choice: embrace transformation or serve as anchors to the old world, their potential harvested to fuel the new. The process was both brutal and beautiful. Feathers blossomed like midnight flowers, eyes multiplied, minds expanded into realms of thought previously unimaginable. Pain mingled with ecstasy, fear with revelation. Throughout it all, I remained the nexus, the focus through which the currents of fate flowed. But even as we grew stronger, I sensed a shadow lurking beyond our sanctuary, a presence watching, waiting. The Inquisitor was coming, not alone, with reinforcements and a sanctioned psyker whose mind could pierce the veils we had woven. The final test was near, and the price yet to be paid. I closed the codex, its pages shimmering with latent power. "Prepare," I whispered to Voss, "for what comes next." The night air outside was thick with a restless tension, the kind that prickles at your skin and sets your nerves jangling like a rattlesnake's tail. Deep within the vault, beneath layers of reinforced steel and ancient wards, I prepared for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. The Inquisitor and his forces would not be deterred, not by prayers, nor by wards, nor by the whispered promises of forbidden knowledge. Voss stood beside me, his form a haunting silhouette of feathers and shifting shadows, eyes glowing like twin stars in the murky vault light. "Master," he murmured, "the adepts are ready, their minds sharpened, their bodies transformed. Yet there is still hesitation among some." I nodded, tracing the intricate geometric patterns inscribed on the floor, the ritual's foundation and our fortress. "Fear is the last barrier. It must be broken." As the heavy vault doors thundered open, heralding the arrival of Inquisitor Clark and his stormtroopers, I felt the currents of fate ripple violently, like stones dropped into a still pond. The sanctioned psyker moved with swift purpose, her eyes unfocused as she reached out with her psychic senses, searching for the hidden threads of our ritual. Clark's voice boomed through the chamber, armored and resolute. "You stand condemned, heretic. Surrender, and perhaps the Emperor's mercy will spare your souls." I smiled, a slow, cold smile that didn't reach my 4 golden eyes. "Mercy is a luxury for the weak, Inquisitor. We offer you a choice instead, enlightenment or oblivion." The psyker's gaze locked onto me, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed the storm raging within her mind. The terror, the awe, the overwhelming flood of forbidden truths crashing against her sanity. With a gesture, I signaled the adepts. They stepped forward, their transformed forms radiating a dark grace, voices weaving the ancient incantations that bent reality at our will. The air thickened, shimmering as the ritual's power surged, the very laws of physics warping and twisting. Clark barked orders, but his men faltered, weapons shaking in trembling hands as the ritual's energy seeped into their minds. The psyker screamed, a sound that tore through the chamber like shattered glass, blood streaming from her eyes and ears as her mind burned under the weight of our revelation. One by one, The stormtroopers dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by visions too vast to comprehend. Clark's fury ignited, but before he could command an assault, I reached into his mind through the psychic conduit. Images flooded his consciousness, truths hidden beneath layers of Imperial dogma, the vast complexity of existence, the fragile threads of reality manipulated by forces beyond his understanding. His armor clattered to the floor as he collapsed, eyes wide with shattered belief. The ritual reached its crescendo as the crystal device at the center pulsed with blinding light, fracturing into 1,000 shards suspended in midair, each reflecting a facet of reality, a glimpse into infinite possibilities. And then, from beyond the veil, came the presence. Tzeentch, the changer of ways, vast, unknowable, a storm of shifting forms and endless eyes. He regarded us with an inscrutable gaze, part judgment, part approval. To my transformed acolytes, he was a path forward, a guide to further evolution. To the fallen Inquisitor and his men, a shattering truth that would forever haunt their broken minds. And to me, a mirror reflecting not only what I was, but what I could become. His voice echoed within my mind, a resonant symphony of power and promise. Well done, Lawrence Hale. You have opened the way. Your purpose now unfolds. A scream pierced the chamber, the final resistance breaking as one bound soul perceived the true cost of our bargain. I reached out, embracing the vast presence, merging my consciousness with his infinite potential. I was no longer merely an archivist. I was the architect of change, the harbinger of evolution, and the game had only just begun. The aftermath was a strange kind of silence. Not the absence of sound, but the heavy weight of reality bending and reshaping itself around us. The vault, once a fortress of cold stone and iron, now seemed to pulse with a living heartbeat, each book an artifact awakening, as if stirred from a centuries-long slumber. The air shimmered with unseen energies, and shadows danced with a life all their own. Voss moved beside me, his feathers catching the flickering light like dark flames. "Master," he said, voice low and melodic. "The boundaries between our world and the beyond are thinner than ever. The changes we have wrought ripple outward, drawing attention." I nodded, eyes, for now all glowing gold, scanning the vast chamber. That attention will not all come bearing gifts. Across the vault, my transformed acolytes gathered, their forms shifting between human and something far more alien. Eyes multiplying, feathers spreading, minds expanding beyond mortal comprehension. They were no longer mere archivists. They were the living embodiment of evolution, carriers of a new truth. My thoughts flickered to the Inquisitor and his men. Twisted by revelation, now vessels of forbidden knowledge, doomed to wander the Imperium as both curse and scourge. Their fate was sealed, their broken minds a testament to the price of awakening. Yet even as we stood on the precipice of a new era, a gnawing uncertainty crept through me, a question that refused to be silenced. What of those who watched from the shadows? The unseen eyes beyond the vault's wards? The forces that had set this chain of events into motion long before I ever touched the codex? As if answering, a soft pulse emanated from the shattered remnants of the crystal device, sending ripples through the shifting air. From its fractured facets, a whisper emerged, unintelligible, yet pregnant with promise and peril. I reached out, fingers trembling, and touched one floating shard. Visions flooded my mind. Distant stars flickering out, empires rising and falling, threads of fate unraveling and weaving anew. At the center of it all stood a figure cloaked in shifting shadows, a presence both terrifying and compelling. Tzeentch's promise echoed in my thoughts. Your story is still being written, but now I glimpsed a deeper design. A game played on scales far beyond my understanding, where pawns and kings alike danced to melodies older than time. A dark smile crept across my lips. The architect's hand was vast, and I but one instrument among many. Yet, armed with newfound power and insight, I would carve my own path through the tangled skein of destiny. Prepare the vault, I commanded Voss. Our work has only just begun. Others will come, seekers, challengers, enemies. He bowed his head, feathers rustling softly. And we shall be ready. As the vault's wards shimmered anew, sealing our sanctuary from prying eyes, I felt the stirrings of something ancient and vast, an awakening that would ripple through the Imperium like a silent storm. Outside, beyond the vault's cold embrace, the stars glimmered with secret light, and somewhere, in the endless darkness, the game awaited its next move. I am Lawrence Hale, archivist of forbidden knowledge, guardian of transformation, and the shadow of change stretches ever onward. The future is a labyrinth, and I hold the key. But what lies beyond the final door? Only time will tell. The days bled into nights, and nights spilled into days, but time itself seemed to warp within the vault's shifting walls. Each moment stretched and folded like the impossible geometries bound within the codex. My 4 golden eyes perceived the flow of causality as a vast tapestry, threads weaving and unraveling in patterns too complex for any mortal mind, except, perhaps, mine. The vault was alive now, a crucible of transformation humming with arcane energies. My acolytes moved through its endless aisles, their forms flickering between human grace and something far more alien. Feathers shimmering with iridescent blues and blacks, eyes multiplying into constellations of awareness. Their minds danced along the edge of comprehension, touching truths that would shatter lesser minds. Voss approached, his voice a soft trill that echoed in the vaulted chamber. Master, there are anomalies, disturbances in the warp. Others sense our presence. They watch, they wait. I studied the swirling currents of fate with my enhanced vision. Indeed, threads of possibility twisted and curled, signaling the approach of unknown forces. Not all were hostile, but none were benign. Prepare the wards, I commanded. Strengthen the protections, but do not seal the vault completely. We must learn who watches and why. A shadow flickered at the edge of my perception. A subtle ripple, like a stone tossed into a still pond. Something ancient, something patient. Elsewhere, in the dark corners of the Imperium, whispers grew. Reports of forbidden knowledge slipping through the cracks, of minds expanding beyond Imperial doctrine. Rumors of a figure cloaked in shadow, wielding power that bent reality itself. I was that figure now. And yet, a question gnawed at me. A question left unanswered by even the Codex's infinite pages. Who was the true architect behind Tzeentch? Was he a god, a demon, or something far older, an intelligence born from the primordial chaos that predated the stars? And what price remained unpaid in this game of evolution and corruption? One night, as the vault hummed with quiet power, I found myself drawn to the shattered crystal shards suspended in midair. Their fractured surfaces reflected not just the room, but glimpses of other realities, worlds twisted by different choices, timelines where I never found the Codex, or where I refused its dark gift. I reached out, fingers brushing a shard. The air thickened, and a voice, not Tzeentch's, whispered through my mind. Beware the final door, Archivist. The warning sent a shiver through my transformed body. There was more to this than I knew, more than even Tzeentch revealed. As I withdrew, the shards pulsed with eerie light, casting fractured shadows that danced like specters. I understood then, the path ahead was fraught with peril, but also with promise. For knowledge is never free, and power always demands a price. I am Lawrence Hale, keeper of secrets, harbinger of change, and the labyrinth beckons. Will I find salvation beyond its walls? Or will I fall, consumed by the very knowledge I sought to master? Only the shifting threads of fate hold the answer, and they are watching, waiting, patient as ever. The vault was quieter than ever, the kind of silence that presses against your skin and seeps into your bones. I stood alone in the center of the ritual chamber, the intricate patterns beneath my feet glowing faintly with the residual energy of our transformation. The shards of the shattered crystal device hovered nearby, their fractured surfaces reflecting countless possible futures, each one a twisting labyrinth of light and shadow. I lifted the codex of impossible geometries in my hands, its cover warm and pulsing with a life of its own. The words inside no longer required reading. They spoke directly to my consciousness, weaving knowledge and power into my very being. Yet beneath the vast understanding, a gnawing doubt lingered, a question unanswered, a secret yet unrevealed. Then the air shifted, the shadows deepened, folding into themselves like smoke curling around an unseen flame. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked in shifting forms that flickered between avian grace and serpentine menace. Its eyes, countless, infinite, fixed upon me with an intensity that pierced beyond flesh and bone. "Lawrence Hale," it intoned, voice like the echo of collapsing stars. "You have walked the path laid before you, embraced the gift and the curse. But the final door remains closed." I met its gaze, unflinching. What lies beyond? The figure's form coalesced, revealing a visage both terrible and sublime, a mask of forgotten gods and shattered realities. Truth, the ultimate revelation. But to pass, one must relinquish all anchors. Identity, loyalty, even the self. A chill ran through me, feathers bristling along my arms. The price was greater than I feared. "I accept," I whispered, voice steady despite the storm within. With a gesture, the figure extended a hand, and the shards of crystal converged into a glowing portal, an aperture between worlds, shimmering with impossible geometry. Stepping forward, I felt my form dissolve and reform, boundaries blurring as I passed through the threshold. The void beyond was a swirling tempest of light and shadow, a cosmic cathedral where time folded upon itself and existence shimmered in infinite possibility. At the heart of this realm waited a presence, neither god nor demon, but the source of all change, Tzeentch, the changer of ways. His gaze was both welcoming and inscrutable. "You have come far, Lawrence Hale. The architect's game is vast, and your role is not yet finished." I knelt before the infinite expanse, embracing the transformation that transcended flesh and mind. "Tell me," I said, "what is the true price of knowledge?" A smile rippled through the shifting forms. "Everything. But in surrender, you find freedom beyond imagining." As the cosmic light enveloped me, I understood at last. The fall was ascension, the corruption a birth. I was no longer merely human. I was evolution incarnate. And the story was only beginning. For in every shadowed vault, in every whispered text, the promise waits. The future coils like a serpent, ready to strike. And I will be watching, always watching, because change is eternal. And so am I.